Welcome back to Factual America, where critical thinking and honest debates are always welcome. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video that challenges the mainstream narrative. Today, we're tackling a hot topic. The experts were wrong about everything. Here's the proof. You've probably heard it before. Trust the experts. But what happens when the so-called experts get it wrong, not just occasionally, but consistently and with serious consequences for our society? Let's dig in because the record is more shocking than you might think. For years, we've been told by government officials, academics, and media pundits that their guidance is backed by undeniable science, facts, and reason. But with every passing year, it seems their predictions miss the mark more often than they hit, and they rarely pay a price for their failures. Today, I'm going to walk you through some glaring examples where experts failed us, what it cost America, and why blind trust in authority is becoming more dangerous than ever. Let's start with a subject that affected every single one of us, the COVID-19 pandemic. Remember the early days? 15 days to slow the spread, they said. Masks don't work. Until suddenly you were scolded for not wearing 3 of them. The goalposts kept moving. Experts who questioned lockdowns, via school closures, or the origin of the virus were censored, ridiculed, or outright banned from public platforms. But fast forward a couple years, and now mainstream sources begrudgingly admit, we got some big things wrong. Take masks, for example. In March 2020, Dr. Anthony Fauci himself told Americans not to worry about wearing them. Then the messaging flipped. Later studies, finally acknowledged by outlets like the New York Times in 2023, showed the real-world effectiveness of cloth masks in stopping transmission was minimal at best. Meanwhile, dissenting doctors who dared to cite similar data in 2020 were deplatformed. Where was the rigorous debate, silenced in the name of expert consensus? And what about school closures? Here's a twist for you. Even the CDC now admits the harms to children, setbacks in learning, mental health issues, and social regression far outweighed any theoretical benefits in stopping the virus. Countries like Sweden kept schools open and saw better outcomes. Yet back then, anyone advocating for in-person education was called an enemy of science. We could spend an entire video just on COVID, but let's widen our lens. Remember nutrition advice from the past few decades? The food pyramid, dictated by government experts, emphasized carbs and demonized fats. We now know, thanks to more research and whistleblowers, that this guidance was shaped by corporate influence and thin science. The low-fat, high-carb mantra directly coincided with skyrocketing obesity and diabetes rates in America. The so-called experts dismissed anyone who disagreed, until the damage was already done. Think about climate predictions. In the 1970s, leading voices warned of a coming ice age. Then, in the 90s and 2000s, it switched sharply to catastrophic global warming. Every decade brings new doomsday deadlines that never quite materialize. In 2006, Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth predicted we'd see ice-free Arctic summers within a decade. The ice is still there. Reasonable debate on environmental policy is stifled, while failed predictions are simply forgotten. And speaking of forgotten predictions, do you remember the experts' forecasts for the American economy? The housing bubble of 2008 was blessed by celebrated financial minds right up until it burst. Alan Greenspan and his ilk claimed subprime loans were contained. Instead, we faced the worst crash since the Great Depression. Who paid the price? The middle class, while the experts kept their jobs or cashed out with bailouts. The truth is, the experts, whether public health bureaucrats, climate forecasters, or economic gurus, often issue dogmatic, one-size-fits-all proclamations that ignore opposing voices. And there's always a twist. When they're wrong, they rarely admit it. Instead, mistakes are memory-holed or blamed on shifting circumstances, as if nobody could have seen it coming. Even in education, think about Common Core. Remember when the nation's top educators assured us this federal overhaul would usher in a new golden age of learning outcomes? Instead, almost everyone, parents, teachers, students, felt the system became more confusing and less effective. Test scores didn't just stagnate, in many areas they dropped. And foreign policy? Oh, the experts have a storied record here. From the Vietnam War to Afghanistan and Iraq, intelligence agencies and top advisors promised quick, decisive victories with dire warnings for anyone who disagreed. The real result? Trillions spent, thousands of lives lost, unstable regions, and no clear win in sight. All along, dissenting voices, many with valuable insights, were silenced or ridiculed until it was too late. What do all these examples have in common? The experts not only get it wrong, but they do so with astonishing confidence, actively suppressing legitimate debate. The consequences are felt by ordinary Americans, while the experts face little accountability. It's almost as if being wrong comes with a promotion in their world. Let's not forget technology and energy. Remember when peak oil doomers predicted we'd run out of fossil fuels by the 2000s? Instead, technology and innovation, often driven by outsiders and entrepreneurs, kept supplies robust. Meanwhile, government-backed boondoggles like Solyndra wasted billions. The experts who approved those deals quietly moved on, as taxpayers picked up the tab. Of course, nobody expects perfection. Real science and honest scholarship thrive on disagreement and debate. But the current system rewards conformity and punishes skepticism. Even when it turns out skepticism was right. How many times do we need to see this cycle play out before we demand change? When the experts fail, the costs are more than just money or lost trust. It's a danger to our freedom. During COVID, many state and local authorities used expert advice to justify sweeping away basic rights, closing churches, restricting movement, shutting small businesses. All under the banner of scientific consensus that later turned out to be wrong, or at least grossly exaggerated. Some of you might be saying, but what about the times experts get it right? Of course, expertise is valuable. It's why you listen to good mechanics or pilots. The problem is when expertise turns into arrogance and criticism is stamped out by power. America was built on open debate and individual liberty, not top-down dictates from bureaucrats, no matter how many degrees they hang on the wall. Here's another twist. Some of the sharpest challenges to expert groupthink have come from regular Americans. Parents, small business owners, independent scientists, even students. Social media and alternative media have made it harder for the establishment to control the narrative, which is probably why calls for censorship are louder than ever. Now, you might wonder, are we saying ignore every expert? Certainly not. The real issue is centralized power. When a handful of unelected people wield the authority to decide what is truth, dissent becomes dangerous. We need more humility from experts and more skepticism from the rest of us, especially the media, who too often act as megaphones instead of watchdogs. I want you to think about this. How many times have you heard the phrase, "the science is settled," only to see the science change dramatically a year later? Science is never settled. It's always a debate, always refining, always questioning. That's what moves humanity forward. So what can we do? Stay informed. Question everything, even if your questions aren't popular. Support independent journalism, independent scientists, and honest debate. Hold the powerful accountable. Don't let them memory hole their mistakes. If we don't, history shows that expert failure repeats itself, usually at our expense. At Factual America, we're dedicated to honest conversations, and sometimes that means challenging the so-called consensus. How many more failed prognostications, lost dollars, and damaged lives will it take before we demand an expert class that answers to the people instead of ruling over them? Here's the bottom line. Experts can inform, but they shouldn't rule. And when they're wrong, as we've seen time and again, the cost is always borne by everyday Americans. If we want a better future for ourselves and our children, it's up to us, not unaccountable experts, to demand transparency, foster debate, and protect liberty. Thanks for watching Factual America. Do you agree that expert failure has become a crisis in America? What's the worst example you've seen in your own life? What topics should we break down next? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice matters. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can join the conversation. Until next time, stay free, stay informed, and keep questioning.